Tropical Storm Erin just made a dangerous shift. It's moving further west than previously expected, and that could change everything. Tropical storm watches have been issued for portions of the Caribbean, and Erin is expected to become a hurricane very soon before rapidly intensifying over the next couple days. I'll show you the latest track, new intensity forecast, and why this westward shift could be a big problem. But before we jump into the forecast, feel free to hit that like button so more people see this update, subscribe so you don't miss the next one, and let me know in the comments where you're watching from, and if you have any questions, comments, or concerns about the forecast. So here's a current look at Tropical Storm Erin. You can see that it's definitely starting to get more intense, more organized, with a lot of intense deep convection, and that central dense overcast around the center, and the hurricane hunters are flying into it. And their first pass, they actually found flight level hurricane force winds at flight level. So this is definitely intensifying significantly and should become a hurricane very soon. Right now, current maximum sustained winds are around 60 miles an hour, minimum pressure around 998 millibars, but it's still going west. And that's the thing, that it's actually gone south of a lot of the forecast guidance, especially since it's not strengthening quite as fast as what a lot of the forecast guidance was showing. That's allowing it to slide further west, which becomes a problem as it heads towards the Caribbean. Tonight, it's supposed to be up to 65 miles an hour. Could strengthen a little more than that. We'll see, depending on how fast it's able to organize. But it will be a hurricane tomorrow. So Friday, we're going to be looking at a Category 1 Hurricane Erin. It continues strengthening as it heads westward. Now, it's going to be in an environment of low wind shear, increasing sea surface temperatures, and less of that dry air. But then after the next couple days, the shear does start to increase, which could create a more asymmetrical system, possibly slowing down that intensification. But with those really high sea surface temperatures, a lot of the forecast models show continued intensification into a very powerful major hurricane. Now, this is expected to go north of the Caribbean on Saturday as a Category 2 hurricane, strengthening rather quickly. And then by Sunday, we could be looking at a Category 3 major Hurricane Erin moving into the southwestern Atlantic. And we'll really have to see what happens after that. But we have tropical storm watches that have been issued for the Caribbean across Anguilla, St. Martin, St. Bartholomew, Bermuda, and also the bottom. So they do have tropical storm watches in effect. Here's the key messages. The impacts from Tropical Storm Erin, there is going to be impacts to the Caribbean now as it's gotten a little bit closer. It's not going to be a direct hit. It's going to be a hurricane as it moves past the Caribbean, but bringing in those tropical storm impacts on the kind of the outer bands of Hurricane Erin. So key messages: 1, heavy rainfall across the northernmost Leeward Islands, the U.S. and British Virgin Islands, as well as southern and eastern Puerto Rico as well. It may lead to isolated flash and urban flooding along with landslides or mudslides this weekend into early next week. So that's going to be the thing, potential for flooding. And then there are tropical storm conditions possible for portions of the northern Leeward Islands where there are tropical storm warnings in place starting on Saturday. And also parts of the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico should be watching for tropical storm force winds possible, at least tropical storm force wind gusts, maybe even tropical storm force sustained winds. And then uncertainty increases after that on what impacts are going to happen in the Bahamas, the east coast of the U.S., and also Bermuda. But I'm going to show some of these forecast models. If you look at the track guidance, you can see that these are the hurricane models right here. They're intensifying this into a very powerful major hurricane out in the southwestern Atlantic, but they're taking it further west than all the other models. That could be something that's a pretty concerning sign if it continues going west and then potentially gets even closer to the east coast of the U.S. as well. And also the Bahamas are going to at least probably be seeing tropical storm force winds with this if it gets close enough. And depending on how big the wind field expands, potentially even stronger winds and more significant impacts. But the other models are taking it out after the next 5 to 7 days. They are taking it out a little more than halfway between North Carolina and Bermuda, a little bit closer to Bermuda on a lot of the forecast guidance. But it's going to be a very powerful hurricane. So the latest intensity guidance is bringing it up to a hurricane in 24 hours or so. So by tomorrow, we're going to be looking at Hurricane Erin. and then by 48 hours, looking at a category 2, and then even a major hurricane within 60 to 72 hours, according to a lot of the forecast guidance, and then some of the models even taking up to a category 4 hurricane. And here's a look at what the HAFS A model has. We have later this evening, kind of going into tonight, still showing around 50 to 60 miles an hour in terms of intensity. Could be a little more than that, actually, depending on how fast it's actually organizing right now, and that's what the recon hurricane hunters are trying to find out. But then it could go up to around 65 miles an hour, and then it quickly becomes a hurricane. So sometime, either tonight or tomorrow, we're going to see it intensifying into a hurricane, and then once that happens, it intensifies very, very quickly. As we notice, it goes from 85 miles an hour all the way up to 105 miles an hour. And notice the islands in the Caribbean. The northeastern Caribbean is right here. And so we could be seeing tropical storm force winds happening across a lot of these islands going into Saturday night and Sunday also. Then notice what happens. This rapidly intensifies, and then the wind field starts expanding. Even though the intensity starts fluctuating, that could be eye wall replacement cycles that are actually expanding the storm, and then it's able to intensify after those kind of finish. Then we see it going all the way up to 150 miles an hour by Sunday. We're looking at a 150 mile an hour category 4 hurricane on the HAFS A model, and then notice it's actually approaching the Bahamas at this point. We're seeing tropical storm force winds hitting the Bahamas as this continues sliding way further west. This is a very concerning thing, that the hurricane guidance is pushing this way to the west of all the other models, the ensembles and the operational deterministic models. And we actually have this intensify all the way up to 135 knots. That's almost a category 5. That's 155 miles an hour. So this could even be almost at category 5 intensity on the HAFS A model. And they're not even showing it as intense as it could be right now. So it could even intensify a little more than what the model is showing. But also, this could be a little bit of a high-end scenario, but also it could do this. You never know. And then notice this hurricane gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, and it really spreads out. So by 5 days out, going into Tuesday, we have a very large hurricane kind of moving very close to the Bahamas, and it's a category 3. Winds are around 120 miles an hour at this point, but it's a very large hurricane too. And so the impacts will be felt further away from the storm. Now, the Caribbean is going to be getting some tropical storm force winds, but also the rain, of course. The rain and flooding is going to be an issue, so you'll definitely want to keep an eye on that. If you're in the northeastern Caribbean, we have around 2 to maybe 4 inches of rain expected across the northeastern Caribbean from the outer bands of tropical storm and soon to be Hurricane Erin. Even if you're further away from the center of the storm, even if you don't get the winds, you're going to get the waves. So here's a look at the significant wave height forecast from the GFS model, and we're looking at Saturday night into Sunday. We have those high waves of probably around 10 to 15 feet in some cases going across the northern Caribbean, and then it's coming towards the Bahamas. And keep in mind that this is the GFS model. It's further east than what the hurricane guidance is showing, and that's why I'm reiterating that, like, hey, this is the GFS further east. If it's further west, it's going to be causing more impacts, making it even more important to be keeping an eye on this system. And so we could be seeing waves 10 to 15 feet across the Bahamas on the GFS model. Then also Bermuda could be looking at waves up to 20 to 25 feet, if not even higher, potentially 30 to 35 feet, depending on how close this gets to Bermuda next week. And this is still several days out, so we'll have to see. But then also the east coast of the U.S. is going to be looking at 15-foot waves, potentially even higher if this gets even a bit closer than what the GFS model is showing. But this expands. This is a very big hurricane, so those waves will expand out from the center. And then, again, look at this. Another tropical system potentially behind it. And I will show that the Climate Prediction Center is watching for another tropical system at this time frame going into the August 20th to 26th timeframe. And that could turn into something even more important to watch. Like, we'll have to see what that one does. The GFS is showing another storm system, and the AI Euro model was as well. Here's what could be happening according to the GFS model for Hurricane Erin and the storm system after it. Interestingly enough, the NHC is watching a disturbance in the next couple days, kind of in the western Gulf off the east coast of Mexico. That's not super likely to form into anything, but it could become a short-lived tropical storm, a weak tropical storm. But look at this. We have Hurricane Erin bringing heavy rain, strong winds to the northern Caribbean going into this weekend from the outer bands of Hurricane Erin. Then the GFS kind of pulls it. You have all these fronts moving through the Atlantic, and some of those you'd think might end up pulling Erin out to sea, but it looks like some of these fronts actually miss Erin, and it still continues going kind of northwest. Then it does actually turn to the north and does avoid the east coast of the U.S., according to the GFS, before turning into a very powerful extratropical cyclone out in the middle of the Atlantic. And then we have another storm system coming into the Caribbean after Erin. So if there's two storm systems coming, that's not good, because they're going basically in a similar direction. And this one, the GFS model, is showing a very powerful hurricane coming towards the Bahamas and the southeastern U.S. So that'll be something to watch as well. After we're done with Hurricane Erin, potentially another storm system, which, we're going towards the peak of the hurricane season, so it's important to be paying attention to these types of things. The ensembles are further east. Again, as I mentioned before, the ensembles are a bit further east of the hurricane guidance, but they're basically halfway between North Carolina and Bermuda. Some of the ensembles are still leaning more towards a track going towards the Bahamas and the east coast of the U.S., but it will turn at some point. It's going to turn to the northeast once it gets to around 35 degrees north or so. So that is expected to happen. And then we also have the GEFS ensemble, the same in terms of the track, pretty much. You do have some models taking it very close to the Bahamas, through the Bahamas, really, and towards the east coast of the U.S. That's, not necessarily going to happen, but some of the GEFS ensembles do take it pretty close to the Bahamas, so that's going to be the next locations that need to be watching this storm. So first, it's the Caribbean going into this weekend. Tropical storm Hurricane Erin causing impacts to the northeastern Caribbean this weekend. Then going into kind of early the middle part of next week, it's going to be the Bahamas that need to be watching. And then kind of the middle to the later part of next week is going to be the East Coast, especially the Outer Banks of North Carolina, the mid-Atlantic coast kind of region, and also Bermuda. Definitely should be watching Tropical Storm Erin as it continues to intensify and move towards these regions. And then, of course, the Climate Prediction Center Global Tropics Hazards Outlook looking at another storm system potentially forming going towards the Caribbean for week 2, August 20th to 26th. A 40 to 60% chance of tropical cyclone formation near Cape Verde, but then 20 to 40% chance that goes out towards the Caribbean, and then another 20 to 40% area to watch going to week 3, August 27th to September 2nd. So the tropics are definitely pretty active as we go through August and head towards the peak of the hurricane season. So that's the latest update on Tropical Storm Erin. If you liked this video, please be sure to hit the like button. If you haven't already, share the video and make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications for more weather updates on the tropics. Thanks for watching. Extreme Weather Zone, out.